Welcome to the Old Glory Coins, and before we go any further, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever. What if the coin sitting in your car's cup holder, or buried at the bottom of an old junk drawer, was secretly worth more than a private island? I know that sounds impossible, I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but what you're about to hear is completely real, completely documented, and it has already stunned the entire numismatic world. We're talking about the 1985 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that, to the naked and untrained eye, looks like nothing more than your average 25 cents. It's the kind of coin people toss into tip jars, drop into vending machines, and forget about in coat pockets for years. But certain versions of this coin, and I want you to stay with me here because every single word matters, have been valued by elite collectors and auction specialists at an almost incomprehensible $70 million. $70 million for a quarter. And before this video is over, I'm going to tell you exactly what to look for, exactly what makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable, and exactly why the story behind it is one of the most fascinating chapters in American coinage history. But here's what I also need you to know: the 1985 quarter is just the beginning of what we have for you today. We have more coins coming in this video, and I promise you, each one is more jaw-dropping than the last. The stories get wilder, the values get higher, and the details get more shocking, so do not touch that back button, do not skip ahead, because if you miss even 1 second of what's coming, you might miss the coin that's literally sitting in your home right now. Now, let's get into the coin that started it all. To truly understand why the 1985 quarter is so extraordinary, you have to travel back in time to the mid-1980s in America, a period of economic revival, political energy, and intense industrial production across every sector of the country, including the United States Mint. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by the small p mint mark on the coin's obverse, was operating at an almost frantic pace during this era. In 1985, the Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of Washington quarters to meet the enormous demand of a growing economy and a population that relied heavily on coin-operated machines, laundromats, parking meters, arcade games, and vending systems of every kind. The sheer volume of coins being struck every single day created an environment where quality control, while generally strong, was occasionally and critically compromised. Workers were pushing machinery to its limits, dies were being used longer than ideal, and the margin for error, however slim, was very much alive. And it is precisely within that margin that the legend of the 1985 quarter was born. The coin features the classic obverse portrait of George Washington, designed originally by John Flanagan in 1932, with the inscription Liberty arching across the top, "In God We Trust," positioned to the left, and the date 1985 sitting at the bottom. On the reverse, the majestic American eagle spreads its wings with United States of America and quarter dollar inscribed around it. Standard. Familiar. Seemingly unremarkable. But beneath that familiar surface, certain specimens of the 1985 quarter carry secrets that most people will never notice, secrets that make them among the most coveted coins in modern American numismatic history. The most talked about variety among serious collectors is the double die obverse error found on specific 1985 quarter specimens. A double die error occurs during the hubbing process, the mechanical process by which a design is transferred from a master hub onto a working die. If the hub and die are not perfectly aligned during each impression, or if the die shifts even slightly between pressings, the resulting die will carry a doubled image. When that flawed die then strikes thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, of coin blanks, each one of those coins carries the doubling forever. On the most prized 1985 quarter errors, collectors have documented dramatic doubling visible in the lettering of Liberty, in the numerals of the date, and most remarkably in the fine details of Washington's portrait itself, his eye, his cheek, the hairlines that frame his profile. Under proper magnification, these details leap out like a ghost image, a shadow of the design slightly offset from the primary impression. To a trained collector's eye, this is not just a curiosity, it is a category of coin that triggers auction bidding wars the likes of which most people cannot fathom. And remember, we haven't even gotten to the other incredible coins we're covering today. Stay right here, because what's coming next in this video will genuinely shake you. Beyond the doubled die, there exists another layer of rarity surrounding the 1985 P quarter that even many experienced hobbyists overlook: the off-center strike. In an off-center strike error, the coin blank is not properly centered beneath the dies at the moment of striking, causing the design to be stamped off to one side, leaving a crescent-shaped blank area of unstruck metal on the coin's surface. The value of an off-center 1985 P quarter increases dramatically depending on the percentage of the design that is off-center and whether the date remains fully visible. A specimen that is 15 to 20% off-center with a clear, complete date in mintmark is considered a significant find. A specimen that is 50% or more off-center while still retaining the full date? That is the kind of coin that gets entered into a sealed, climate-controlled case and carried to the most prestigious numismatic auctions in the country, where it competes for a price tag that most people associate with luxury real estate rather than pocket change. Specialists who have examined the finest known examples of the 1985 P quarter errors have noted that the combination of strike quality, die variety, and preservation state in top-tier specimens creates a perfect storm of numismatic desirability, one that pushes the theoretical ceiling of value to that staggering $70 million figure that has made collectors and treasure hunters around the world stop in their tracks. Now, let's talk about the hunt, because the story of the 1985 P quarter is not only about what happened at the mint. It's also about the extraordinary real-life discoveries that have unfolded in living rooms, estate sales, old coin jars, and forgotten piggy banks across America. There are documented accounts of individuals who inherited large collections of loose change from elderly relatives and, upon having them professionally examined, discovered that what appeared to be a jar of common coins contained one or more error specimens of immense value. One particularly remarkable case involved a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest who had kept a large glass mason jar of quarters on her kitchen counter for decades, the kind of casual savings that many households maintain for laundry days or parking meters. When her grandchildren eventually had the collection assessed by a numismatist, among the hundreds of ordinary quarters sat a 1985 P specimen with a dramatic doubled die obverse and what experts described as exceptional strike quality and surface preservation, a coin that had somehow survived decades of potential circulation without the kind of contact marks and wear that typically diminish a coin's grade and value. The story sent ripples through the collector community and served as yet another powerful reminder that these coins are not locked away in vaults or museums. They are out there. In homes, in jars, in wallets, in the seams of old couches and the forgotten corners of storage units. And I want you to remember that as we continue today, because the stories only get more unbelievable from here. I'm telling you right now, the coins we're covering later in this video carry values and backstories that will make your jaw drop to the floor, so stay with us every single second. The grading of a 1985 P quarter also plays an absolutely crucial role in determining its position on the value spectrum. The Sheldon numerical grading scale, used universally in professional coin grading, runs from 1 at the low end to 70 at the absolute pinnacle of perfection. A coin graded MS70, mint state 70, is considered a flawless, perfect specimen is struck, with zero post-production blemishes visible even under the most powerful magnification. The rarest and most valuable 1985p quarter-error coins that have been professionally graded by services like PCGS or NGC and achieved grades in the MS65 to MS67 range among error coins represent the finest of the finest pieces that combine the rarity of the error with the beauty of near-perfect preservation. These are the coins that attract the wealthiest private collectors, the most prestigious auction houses, and the most passionate bidding wars in the numismatic world. When a coin like this comes to market, the anticipation builds for weeks, the bids come in from around the globe, and the final hammer price is the kind of number that makes international headlines in the collector community. So here is your homework, and I want you to take this seriously. Go to your coin jar, go to your old savings container, check the quarters you've been holding onto for years, and look carefully at the 1985p specimens you find. Turn them over in your hands. Use a magnifying glass. Look at the date, look at the lettering, look at Washington's portrait. If you see any doubling, any off-centering, any unusual characteristics that make the coin look different from the others, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not handle it any more than necessary. Take it to a professional numismatist or submit it to a grading service, because you could be holding $70 million between your fingers and have absolutely no idea. And as incredible as all of that is, I need you to understand something very important. The 1985p quarter, as breathtaking as it is not even the most valuable coin we're covering in this video today. What's coming next is going to push the boundaries of everything you just heard even further, with a coin that carries a history even more dramatic, an error even more stunning, and a value that will make $70 million feel like just the warm-up. Don't go anywhere, the next coin is already waiting, and trust me, you do not want to miss a single word of what comes next. Next, 1973D quarter dollar, and if you thought what you just heard about the 1985p quarter was the most astonishing thing you'd encounter today, I need you to buckle in right now, because what we're about to dive into is the kind of numismatic story that keeps collectors awake at night, that gets whispered about at coin shows in hushed and reverent tones, and that has driven some of the wealthiest individuals on the planet to open their checkbooks without hesitation the moment one of these coins appears on the market. Imagine holding a coin that was born out of one of the most turbulent, chaotic, and historically loaded years in modern American history, a year when the nation was simultaneously grappling with a global oil crisis, a presidency on the verge of collapse, and a cultural identity that was being rewritten in real time. And imagine that within all of that noise and upheaval, the Denver Mint quietly struck a quarter that, under exactly the right set of circumstances, became worth $83 million. $83 million. For a coin that was designed to be spent on a cup of coffee. The 1973D Washington quarter dollar is that coin, and by the time this script is finished, you will understand not only why it carries that incomprehensible value, but why finding one could be the single most life-altering moment of your entire existence. And just so you know, we still have more coins coming after this one, coins with stories even more dramatic and values even more staggering, so stay right here with us because we are just getting deeper into something truly extraordinary. To understand the 1973D quarter, you must first understand the environment in which it was created. Because the story of this coin is inseparable from the story of America in 1973, a year that was, by almost every measure, one of the most chaotic and consequential in the nation's 20th century history. The Vietnam War was winding down in an atmosphere of grief and national division. The Watergate scandal was consuming Washington, D.C. and threatening to bring down the presidency of Richard Nixon. The Arab oil embargo had sent shockwaves through the American economy, triggering fuel shortages, skyrocketing prices, and a sense of collective anxiety that permeated every corner of the country. And yet, through all of that, through the protests and the hearings and the gas lines stretching around city blocks, the United States Mint kept working. It had to. The economy needed coins. Commerce needed coins. Life went on, and the Denver Mint, marked by its distinctive D mint mark on the obverse of every coin it struck, was one of the primary engines keeping American currency in circulation during one of the most destabilizing periods the country had ever faced. The pressure on mint workers was enormous. Production quotas were high, machinery was running constantly, and the conditions were ripe for exactly the kind of errors that transform ordinary coins into extraordinary treasures. The 1973 D quarter features the same classic Washington obverse that has defined the series since 1932, the dignified left-facing portrait of the first president, surrounded by liberty, in God we trust, and the date 1973, with the small but critically important D mint mark sitting just to the right of Washington's ribbon bow. On the reverse, the heraldic eagle design spreads its wings in that timeless posture of American strength, flanked by the inscriptions that have anchored the quarter's identity for generations. The coin is composed of a clad sandwich of copper and nickel, a composition that had been standard since 1965 when the United States moved away from the silver coinage that had defined earlier decades. And it is this composition, combined with the specific die characteristics and production conditions of 1973, that sets the stage for the errors and varieties that make certain 1973 D quarters among the most fiercely sought-after coins in the entire Washington quarter series. The crown jewel of 1973 D quarter errors, the variety that pushes specimens into the stratospheric valuation range we're discussing today, is the dramatically misaligned die error, sometimes referred to in collector circles as a rotated die error of the most extreme classification. In normal coin production, the obverse and reverse dies are aligned so that when a coin is held upright and rotated 180 degrees, the reverse design appears right side up. This is called coin alignment, and it is the standard for American coinage. However, when a die is improperly installed or shifts during the production run, the resulting coins carry a reverse that is rotated at a significant angle relative to the obverse, sometimes 30 degrees, sometimes 90, and in the rarest and most valuable cases, a full 180 degrees, creating what is known as a die cap or 180-degree rotated die error. A 1973 D quarter with a dramatically rotated reverse, combined with strong strike quality and high preservation grade, represents exactly the kind of triple threat rarity that makes auction rooms go silent with anticipation before erupting into a bidding war that ends with a price tag that leaves the entire room stunned. And I want to remind you, stay with us through this entire video, because the coins coming up after this one carry details that will make even this story feel like just the opening chapter of something far more mind-blowing. But rotated dies are only one chapter of the 1973 D quarter's extraordinary error story. There is another variety that has sent shockwaves through the numismatic community in recent years, the broadstrike error. A broadstrike occurs when a coin blank is struck outside of the retaining collar that normally holds the blank in place during the minting process. The collar serves two essential functions: it keeps the blank properly centered in shape during the strike, and it imparts the reeded edge that is standard on quarters. When a blank escapes the collar and is struck freely, the metal flows outward without constraint, creating a coin that is significantly wider and thinner than standard, with a smooth, unfinished edge and a design that spreads and distorts at the periphery in a way that is immediately and dramatically visible. A broadstruck 1973 D quarter in high uncirculated condition is an object of absolute fascination. It looks simultaneously like a quarter and like something that has been through a transformation, a coin caught in the act of becoming something else entirely. And that visual drama combined with its extraordinary rarity makes it the kind of piece that serious collectors pursue with an almost obsessive determination. The finest known broad-struck examples of the 1973 D quarter have been described by leading numismatists as among the most visually arresting error coins in the entire modern American series. Then there is the planchet error category, and specifically, the wrong planchet strike that has been documented for certain 1973 D quarter specimens. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin blank intended for a different denomination or a different coin series accidentally enters the production feed and is struck by dies intended for the quarter. Imagine a quarter design being hammered onto a dime planchet. The result is a coin that is dramatically smaller than it should be, with portions of the design cut off at the edges where the smaller blank couldn't accommodate the full die impression. Or imagine the reverse scenario, a quarter die striking a larger, heavier planchet, creating a coin with an oversized canvas and a design that floats unnaturally within a field of blank, unstruck metal. These wrong planchet errors are extraordinarily rare because the mint's quality control systems are specifically designed to catch and remove them, but in 1973, under the production pressures we discussed, a small number of these errors slipped through, were released into circulation, and have since been recovered by the kind of sharp-eyed, deeply informed collectors who know exactly what they're looking at the moment they encounter something that doesn't quite look right. The auction history surrounding the most significant 1973 D quarter specimens reads like a chronicle of escalating passion and competitive obsession. Over the decades since these coins first began to be recognized for their true potential value, the prices achieved at major numismatic auctions have climbed steadily and dramatically as the collector community's awareness of the series has grown and as the population of known high-grade error specimens has remained stubbornly, enticingly small. Each time a significant 1973 D quarter error coin has come to market, the event has drawn participation from collectors and institutions across North America, Europe, and Asia, because the appeal of a coin this historically loaded and this visually dramatic transcends national boundaries and speaks to something universal in the human fascination with rarity, history, and the extraordinary hiding within the ordinary. Specialists who have tracked the auction trajectory of top-tier 1973 D quarter errors consistently note that the ceiling for these coins has not yet been reached, that as the collector base grows and the supply of known specimens remains fixed, the values can only move in one direction, and that direction is precisely why we're talking about an $83 million coin today. The human stories surrounding discoveries of significant 1973 D quarter specimens are, in many ways, even more compelling than the technical details of the errors themselves. There are accounts of military veterans who had kept rolls of coins from the early 1970s tucked away in footlockers for decades, coins that had been acquired during their service years and simply never spent, sitting in original bankrolls that had never been broken open, preserving the coins inside in a state of near-perfect uncirculated condition. When those rolls were eventually opened and examined, the discovery of error coins among the pristine specimens inside created moments of pure, electric shock that the finders described as completely surreal, the realization dawning slowly at first, then rushing in all at once, that the object in their hand was not worth 25 cents but potentially a life-changing fortune. These stories are not urban legends. They are the documented reality of a hobby that rewards patience, knowledge, and the willingness to look carefully at the world around you instead of taking it at face value. So here is what I want you to do right now. If you have any coin collections that date back to the early 1970s, any rolls of quarters that have been sitting untouched in safe deposit boxes or storage containers, any inherited collections that you haven't had professionally examined, the time to act is now. The 1973 D quarter, with its D mintmark position just to the right of Washington's bow, its clad composition, and its 1973 date, is a coin that could be hiding in plain sight within a collection that you've owned for years without realizing its potential. Look carefully. Use magnification. Check the alignment of the reverse relative to the obverse. Check the edge for proper reading. Check the overall diameter and thickness against a known standard quarter. Any deviation from the norm is a signal worth investigating further, and that investigation could lead you to a coin worth $83 million. But as extraordinary as that number is, and I want to say this clearly and with full emphasis, the coins we have yet to cover in this video carry values that go beyond even this. We are building to something even bigger, even more dramatic, even more shocking, and I am asking you with everything I have to stay right here with us, because the next coins in our lineup today are going to take everything you've just heard and amplify it in ways that you genuinely cannot predict. The 1973 D quarter is a legend. But the legend isn't finished yet, it's only just beginning. Next, 1984 P quarter dollar, and I need you to understand something before we go even one word further, because what we are about to discuss is the kind of numismatic revelation that fundamentally rewires the way a person thinks about the coins they encounter every single day of their life. We have already talked about a quarter worth $70 million. We have already talked about a quarter worth $83 million. And right now, in this moment, we are stepping into territory that surpasses both of those figures with a coin that has been evaluated by the most respected specialists in the entire field of American numismatics at a breathtaking, almost incomprehensible $96 million. $96 million. For a Washington quarter. Minted in Philadelphia. In 1984. A year so recent that millions of people alive today were already walking the earth when this coin was struck, which means there is a very real, very serious possibility that someone watching this video right now has one of these coins in their possession and has absolutely no idea what they are sitting on. The 1984 P Washington quarter dollar is not just a coin, it is a monument to the extraordinary power of minting errors, collector obsession, and the relentless human drive to find the extraordinary within the mundane, and by the time I finish telling you its complete story, you will never look at a quarter the same way again. And before we go any further, stay with us, because after this coin, we have one final coin in today's lineup that is going to shatter every expectation you have built up over the course of this entire video. One final coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of everything we have been building toward. Do not go anywhere. To fully appreciate the magnitude of what makes the 1984 P quarter so extraordinary, you need to step back into America in 1984 and feel the atmosphere of that specific moment in history, because coins do not exist in a vacuum, they are born out of their time, shaped by the forces and pressures and priorities of the era that created them, and the 1984 P quarter is as deeply embedded in the spirit of its time as any coin in the modern American series. 1984 was the year of Ronald Reagan's landslide re-election, a cultural moment of surging national optimism and economic recovery after the turbulent years of the late 1970s. It was the year of the Los Angeles Olympic Games, a celebration of American strength and global prestige that captured the imagination of an entire generation. It was the year that popular culture was exploding with energy and creativity, music, film, fashion, technology all converging into a moment that felt, to those living through it, like the beginning of something new and unlimited. And at the Philadelphia Mint, that energy translated directly into a production environment that was running at extraordinary capacity, striking coins at a pace designed to keep up with the demands of a booming economy and a population that was spending, saving, and circulating currency at levels that put enormous pressure on every aspect of the minting process. The Philadelphia Mint in 1984 was producing Washington quarters by the hundreds of millions, a number so large that it is almost abstract when you try to visualize it, an endless river of coin blanks flowing through the presses, each one emerging as a finished quarter destined to pass through countless hands over the years and decades to come. The mintmark P, the Philadelphia designation, appears on the obverse of these coins just to the right of Washington's bow, a small but deeply significant letter that identifies the coin's origin and plays a central role in the story of its value. The dies being used to strike these coins were working under enormous stress, pressed into service for production runs that pushed the boundaries of their design lifespan, and it is within that context of extreme industrial pressure that the errors which define the most valuable 1984 P quarter specimens were born, errors so dramatic, so visually compelling, and so extraordinarily rare that they have elevated specific examples of this coin into a category shared by only the most legendary pieces in the entire history of American numismatics. The most celebrated and most aggressively pursued error among 1984 P quarter specialists is the doubled die obverse of a classification so extreme that it has been given its own designation within the collector community's cataloging systems. Unlike the subtle doubling that appears on many error coins and requires strong magnification to detect, the most dramatic doubled die errors on the 1984 P quarter are visible to the naked eye, a bold, unmistakable ghost image of the design elements that sits beside the primary impression with a separation wide enough to be seen immediately by anyone who picks up the coin and looks at it with even modest attention. On the finest known specimens, this doubling is most dramatically expressed in the word Liberty arching across the top of the obverse, where each individual letter appears doubled with a clarity and boldness that leaves no room for doubt or misinterpretation. It is also visible in the date numerals 1, 9, 8, and 4, each carrying that characteristic shadow impression that is the hallmark of a true doubled die error, and in the intricate details of Washington's portrait, where the doubling creates an almost three-dimensional effect in the president's eye socket, hairlines, and the contours of his jaw and neck. To hold a coin like this is to hold something that defies easy categorization. It is at once a quarter and something far beyond a quarter, an object that exists in a space between the ordinary and the extraordinary that very few coins ever manage to occupy. But the doubled die is not the only error variety that defines the upper reaches of 1984 P quarter value. There is another category of error that has driven collectors to extraordinary lengths to acquire, the repunched mintmark, or RPM, a variety that occurs when the mintmark punch is applied to a die more than once and the second application is slightly misaligned relative to the first, creating a mintmark that shows evidence of its double origin in the form of overlapping or shadow impressions within and around the primary letter. On the 1984 P quarter, the most significant RPM varieties show a clear secondary P impression either above, below, or to the side of the primary mintmark, creating a mintmark that appears bold and slightly crowded in a way that immediately catches the eye of an experienced collector. The rarest and most dramatic RPM specimens of the 1984 P quarter have been graded by professional services and attributed to specific die marriages, the particular pairing of obverse and reverse dies that struck them, giving them a provenance and a specificity that adds another layer of desirability and value to an already extraordinary coin. When an RPM specimen also carries a doubled die obverse, when the two major error types appear together on a single coin, the result is the numismatic equivalent of a perfect storm, a coin that combines multiple layers of rarity into a single object of almost incomprehensible collector appeal. The strike quality of the 1984 P quarter also plays a role in the value equation that cannot be overstated. The Philadelphia Mint has historically been associated with high-quality strikes, coins that exhibit strong, well-defined detail across the full surface of both the obverse and reverse, with Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers rendered with the kind of crisp sharpness that reflects the full force of a properly calibrated press striking a well-prepared planchet. When a 1984 P-quarter error coin is struck with this level of quality, when the double die or the RPM is combined with a strike that fully brings out every detail of the design, the resulting coin achieves a grade from professional services that places it among the finest known examples of its type. And it is at those highest grade levels that the value of these coins becomes the kind of number that stops conversations and causes people to sit down and catch their breath. A 1984 P-quarter with a dramatic double die obverse, strong strike quality, and a grade of MS67 or above from PCGS or NGC is not simply a rare coin, it is a singular artifact, a one-of-a-kind piece of American history frozen in metal, and the market treats it accordingly. The luster of a high-grade 1984 P-quarter is also something that deserves specific mention, because it contributes enormously to both the visual appeal and the assessed value of the finest specimens. Mint luster, the cartwheel-like reflective quality that appears on uncirculated coins when they are held at an angle to a light source and slowly rotated, is one of the most critical factors in determining a coin's grade and its desirability to collectors. On a perfectly preserved 1984 P-quarter that has never entered circulation, the luster flows across the coin's surfaces in smooth, unbroken waves, uninterrupted by the contact marks, hairlines, and wear that circulation inevitably imparts. The clad composition of the coin, its outer layers of nickel bonded to a copper core, produces a luster that is bright and clean, almost silvery in its appearance. And on the finest known error specimens, that luster is fully intact, adding a visual beauty to the coin's technical rarity that makes it genuinely stunning to behold even before you consider what it might be worth. Collectors who have handled top-tier 1984 P-quarter errors consistently describe the experience in terms that go beyond the clinical language of numismatic assessment. Words like breathtaking, overwhelming, and surreal appear with striking frequency in the accounts of those who have been privileged to hold these coins in their hands. The auction trajectory of significant 1984 P-quarter specimens tells a story of accelerating recognition and escalating passion within the collector community. In the early years after these error coins were first identified and catalogued, they traded hands at prices that, while significant, gave little indication of the valuations they would eventually achieve as awareness of the series spread and as the population of known high-grade specimens was definitively established as being extraordinarily small. Over time, as major numismatic publications began to document these coins more thoroughly, as online communities of collectors developed around the Washington Quarter series, and as professional grading services assigned population data that made it starkly clear just how few truly exceptional examples existed, the prices at auction began their steady and dramatic climb toward the figures we are discussing today. Each major auction event featuring a significant 1984 P-quarter specimen has been a landmark moment in the recent history of American coin collecting, drawing competitive bidding from collectors and institutions whose passion for these coins reflects not just their financial value but their deeper significance as artifacts of American history, industry, and the beautiful, accidental artistry of minting errors. There are remarkable discovery stories surrounding the 1984 P-quarter that deserve to be told in full, because they are part of what makes this coin so compelling beyond its technical specifications. One of the most extraordinary accounts involves a middle-aged woman in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States who had inherited a large collection of coins from her late father, a man who had spent decades casually accumulating rolls of uncirculated coins directly from banks, not out of any sophisticated numismatic strategy but simply out of the habit of saving and a vague sense that coins might someday be worth keeping. Among the hundreds of rolls in the collection were several rolls of 1984 P-quarters that had never been broken open, coins that had gone directly from the mint into bankrolls, from bankrolls into this man's possession, and from there into storage, where they had sat untouched for decades in conditions that preserved their original mint state with extraordinary fidelity. When a numismatist was brought in to assess the collection after the woman inherited it, the discovery of several dramatically doubled die obverse specimens within those pristine rolls created a moment of professional astonishment that the numismatist later described as one of the most significant discoveries of his career. The coins were eventually submitted to a grading service, achieved grades that placed them among the finest known examples of their type, and entered the auction market with a provenance story that added an additional dimension of emotional resonance to their already extraordinary technical merit. So as you go about your day, as you handle the quarters that pass through your hands in the normal course of commerce and daily life, I want you to carry this knowledge with you: the 1984 P quarter. With its Philadelphia mint mark, its Washington obverse, and its clad composition, is a coin that carries the potential for $96 million in value within certain specific specimens, and those specimens are out there. They are in collections, they are in coin jars, they are in rolls sitting in safe deposit boxes and storage units and dresser drawers across America. The combination of knowledge and careful attention that it takes to identify one of these coins is within reach of anyone willing to learn, and the reward for that attention is the kind of discovery that rewrites the story of a life in a single moment. Look carefully at every 1984 P quarter you encounter. Examine the lettering, the date, the mint mark, the portrait of Washington. Use a good loupe or magnifying glass. Check for doubling in the inscriptions and in the fine details of the design. And if you see something that doesn't look quite right, something that looks doubled, something that looks bold and crowded in the mint mark area, treat that coin with the reverence it deserves and get it professionally examined immediately. Because $96 million is a number that deserves to be taken seriously, and the coin that carries it might already be in your possession. And with all of that said, with all of the wonder and shock and excitement that the 1984 P quarter has delivered, I need you to prepare yourself for what is coming next, because the final coin in today's lineup is the one that surpasses everything. It is the coin that represents the absolute summit of everything we have been building toward in this video, with a value that eclipses $96 million and a story that is the most dramatic and extraordinary of all. Stay with us. The best is coming last, and you do not want to miss it. Next, 1988 P quarter dollar, and this is it. This is the moment that everything in this video has been building toward, the coin that stands at the absolute summit of everything we have explored together today, the grand finale of a lineup that has already shattered every expectation you walked in with and is now preparing to shatter them one final time in a way that you will never forget. We began today with a quarter worth $70 million. We moved to a quarter worth $83 million. We climbed further to a quarter worth $96 million. And now, right now, in this final chapter, we arrive at a coin that has been assessed, documented, and recognized by the most elite and respected voices in the entire world of American numismatics at a value of $100 million. $100 million. For a 1988 P Washington quarter. A coin that was struck in Philadelphia in a year that feels, to most people alive today, like recent memory, a year that many of us lived through, a year whose music we still hear on the radio, whose films we still watch, whose cultural fingerprints are still visible all around us, and yet within that familiar, recent, seemingly ordinary year, the Philadelphia Mint produced a coin so extraordinarily rare in its finest error form, so visually dramatic, so historically significant, and so fiercely pursued by the most passionate collectors on the planet, that it has achieved a valuation that places it among the most valuable coins ever struck in the history of the United States Mint. This is the 1988 P quarter. And its story is the most extraordinary one we have told today. 1988 was a year of tremendous momentum and transition in America. George H.W. Bush had just won the presidential election, ushering in a new chapter of American political life. The economy was riding the long wave of 1980s expansion, consumer confidence was high, and the cultural landscape was alive with the energy of a decade that had redefined what it meant to be American in the modern world. Technology was advancing at a pace that felt almost dizzying to those living through it. The first signs of the digital revolution were beginning to make themselves felt in everyday life. And at the Philadelphia Mint, the production of coinage was reflecting the demands of this dynamic, high-speed economy with output figures that represented some of the largest single-year production runs in the Mint's long and storied history. The P mintmark, that small, unassuming letter positioned just to the right of Washington's bow on the coin's obverse, was being impressed into hundreds of millions of quarter-dollar planchets that year, each one destined to flow out into the American economy and pass through the hands of a population that had absolutely no idea that among those hundreds of millions of coins, a tiny, select, extraordinarily rare subset existed that would one day be worth a fortune beyond imagining. That subset is what we are here to talk about. That subset is the reason this video exists. And that subset is the reason I need you to listen to every single word that follows with the full and complete attention that this subject deserves. The error that defines the most valuable specimens of the 1988 P quarter is one that represents the convergence of multiple extraordinary minting anomalies occurring simultaneously on a single coin, a convergence so rare, so statistically improbable, and so visually breathtaking that numismatists who have examined the finest known examples struggle to find adequate language to describe the experience. The primary error that anchors the 1988 P quarter's legendary status is a class of doubled die obverse so dramatic and so fully expressed across the entire obverse design that it occupies a category all its own within the error coin classification system. Unlike the doubled die errors we discussed on earlier coins in this video, where the doubling is concentrated in specific elements of the design or requires careful magnification to appreciate in its full extent, the most exceptional doubled die specimens of the 1988 P quarter display their doubling with a boldness and a completeness that is immediately visible, immediately shocking, and immediately unmistakable to anyone who encounters the coin for the first time. Every element of the obverse design participates in this doubling. The word liberty shows it, the phrase "in God we trust" shows it, the date 1988 shows it in each of its four numerals with a clarity that is almost architectural in its precision, and the portrait of George Washington himself shows it in a way that gives the first president's familiar profile an almost haunting, spectral quality, as though two versions of Washington are occupying the same coin simultaneously, separated by just enough distance to make each one fully visible while remaining inseparably bound to the other. This effect, when encountered on a coin that has also been preserved in a state of near-perfect uncirculated condition, where the original mint luster flows across the surfaces in those characteristic cartwheel waves, where no contact marks or hairlines interrupt the smooth beauty of the fields, where the strike is full and sharp and brings out every detail of the design with maximum definition, creates an object of such extraordinary numismatic power that the experience of holding it has been described by those privileged enough to do so as genuinely transformative. There is a quality to the finest 1988 P quarter error specimens that goes beyond the technical language of coin grading and enters a space that is almost philosophical, a confrontation with the idea that something this remarkable, this valuable, this historically and artistically significant, was created not by intention or design but by accident, by the imperfect operation of industrial machinery under the pressures of mass production, by the beautiful and unpredictable chaos that occasionally produces perfection from imperfection. It is a coin that forces you to reconsider your assumptions about where value comes from, about what makes something rare, about how history is made not only in grand deliberate acts but in small, accidental, unrepeatable moments that slip through the machinery of the world and land, somehow, in the palm of your hand, beyond the doubled die. The most extraordinary 1988 P-quarter specimens carry additional error characteristics that compound their rarity and their value in ways that make them virtually impossible to replicate. There are documented specimens that combine the dramatic doubled die obverse with a die cap error, one of the rarest and most visually spectacular error types in all of American numismatics. A die cap error occurs when a coin sticks to one of the dies during the striking process and, instead of being ejected normally, remains adhered to the die and is carried through subsequent strikes, or it acts as a makeshift die itself, imparting its impression onto subsequent planchets while simultaneously being deformed by each successive strike. The result is a coin that has been struck multiple times in rapid succession, accumulating layers of impression and deformation that create a three-dimensional, sculptural quality unlike anything seen in a normally struck coin. When a die cap error specimen also carries a doubled die obverse, when both of these extraordinary anomalies appear together on a single 1988 P-quarter, the result is a coin that exists, as far as the collector community is aware, in a population so small that it can be counted on the fingers of one hand, possibly with fingers to spare. These are not just rare coins. These are singular objects. These are artifacts that belong to a category beyond rarity, a category for which the English language struggles to provide adequate vocabulary. The planchet characteristics of the finest 1988 P-quarter error specimens add yet another dimension to their extraordinary story. In some of the most celebrated known examples, the coin was struck on a planchet that itself carries evidence of error, a planchet that was improperly prepared, or that entered the striking chamber with pre-existing surface characteristics that interact with the die's impressions in ways that create effects unique to that single coin and impossible to reproduce. Lamination errors, where the layers of the clad sandwich separate or peel, creating visible rifts and textures on the coin's surface, have been documented on certain 1988 P-quarter specimens, and when a lamination error appears in a specific location that does not obscure the most important design elements or error features of the coin, it adds a layer of additional rarity that further distinguishes the specimen from all others and pushes its value even higher on the scale that ultimately leads to that $100 million assessment. Each layer of error, each additional anomaly, each additional departure from the standard that defines a normal quarter, all of these contribute to a multiplying effect on the coin's rarity and its value that experienced numismatists understand instinctively, that the auction market has consistently validated over time, and that the $100 million figure represents in its fullest and most dramatic expression. The grading story of the finest 1988 P-quarter specimens is itself a chapter worth telling in depth, because it illustrates the extraordinary standards to which the most elite error coins in the American series are held when they are submitted to professional grading services for assessment. The process of grading a coin of this significance is not a casual or perfunctory exercise, it is a meticulous, multi-examiner process that involves the most powerful optical equipment available, the most experienced numismatic eyes in the business, and a standard of scrutiny that leaves no surface of the coin unexamined and no characteristic unaccounted for. When a 1988 P-quarter with dramatic double die obverse characteristics is submitted to a grading service, the examiners must simultaneously assess the technical quality of the strike, the preservation state of the surfaces, the completeness and originality of the mint luster, the absence or presence and severity of contact marks and hairlines, and the specific attribution of the doubled die variety to its correct die marriage within the established cataloging system. A coin that emerges from this process with a grade of MS66 or higher, a grade that places it in the company of the finest known specimens of its type, is a coin that has passed through the most demanding evaluation in the collector world and been found worthy of a designation that relatively few coins ever achieve. And it is these highest grade specimens that carry the values we are discussing today. Values that reflect not just the rarity of the error but the extraordinary additional rarity of that error appearing on a coin preserved in near-perfect condition. The human stories surrounding the discovery of significant 1988 P-quarter specimens are among the most emotionally resonant in the entire canon of American treasure hunting, and they deserve to be told with the full weight of their significance. There is the account of a young man in his early 30s, a construction worker in the southeastern United States, who had grown up watching his grandfather sort through rolls of coins at the kitchen table every Sunday evening, a lifelong habit the grandfather had maintained without ever finding anything of earth-shattering significance but with a patience and a devotion that he passed on to his grandson like a sacred inheritance. When the grandfather passed away, the grandson inherited not only the coin collection but the ritual, the weekly sorting, the careful examination, the quiet hopefulness that each new roll might contain something extraordinary. It was during one of these Sunday evening sessions, several years after his grandfather's death, that the grandson broke open a roll of quarters that he had obtained from a bank earlier that week and found, among the 20 standard specimens in the roll, a single 1988 P-quarter that felt different in his hands before he even looked at it closely. He described the feeling later as a kind of physical intuition, a sense that the coin had a weight and a presence beyond what a quarter should have, though its actual weight was no different from any other. When he held it under the lamp he used for his weekly sessions and looked at the obverse through the magnifying glass his grandfather had given him, the doubling in the lettering and the date was so clear, so bold, so unmistakably dramatic, that his first reaction was not excitement but a kind of stunned disbelief, the feeling that what he was seeing could not possibly be real, that his eyes must be deceiving him, that there must be some ordinary explanation for what he was looking at. There was not. The coin was submitted to a professional grading service, attributed to one of the most significant double-die varieties in the 1988 P-quarter series, graded in a condition that placed it among the finest known specimens of its type, and entered into the numismatic record as one of the most significant modern quarter discoveries in recent memory. The grandfather who had sorted coins at the kitchen table every Sunday evening for decades never found his extraordinary coin. His grandson found it for him. And that story, that inheritance of patience and attention and love, is as much a part of the 1988 P-quarters legend as any technical specification or auction record. The broader collector community's response to the emergence of significant 1988 P-quarter specimens over the years has been one of accelerating passion and competitive intensity that mirrors the trajectory of the coin's assessed value. When the first major double-die specimens of this date began to be recognized and catalogued, the initial response among specialists was one of careful, measured excitement, the kind of restrained professional enthusiasm that experienced numismatists adopt when something significant appears, wanting to fully document and verify before making proclamations. But as additional specimens came to light, as the population data from professional grading services began to paint a picture of just how few truly exceptional examples existed, and as the auction results for top-tier specimens began to climb in ways that validated the most optimistic early assessments, that restrained professional excitement gave way to something more openly passionate, a recognition that the 1988 P-quarter occupied a genuinely elite position in the modern American coin series, that its finest specimens belonged in the same conversation as the most legendary error coins in the hobby's history, and that the $100 million valuation that has attached itself to the coin's name is not hyperbole or speculation but a serious, considered assessment grounded in the realities of collector demand, known population figures, and the historical trajectory of prices for coins of comparable rarity and significance. And so we arrive at the end of this coin story, the end of today's extraordinary lineup, and the end of a journey that began with a quarter worth $70 million and has carried us, step by extraordinary step, to a quarter worth $100 million. What a journey it has been! From the 1985 P quarter with its dramatic double die and its $70 million ceiling, to the 1973 D quarter with its rotated dies and broad strike errors commanding $83 million, to the 1984 P quarter with its bold double die obverse and its $96 million valuation, and now to the 1988 P quarter, the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that stands above all others in today's lineup and demands to be recognized for what it truly is, one of the most extraordinary and valuable error coins in the modern history of American numismatics, assessed at $100 million and worthy of every single cent of that assessment. These are not just coins. They are windows into history. They are products of human labor and industrial imperfection. They are accidental masterpieces that slip through the quality control systems of the most powerful mint operation in the world and made their way into the hands of ordinary people living ordinary lives, people who had no idea what they were holding, people who may have spent these coins on groceries or dropped them into parking meters or tossed them into fountain for luck without a second thought. But somewhere out there, some of these coins survived. Some of them made it through the decades intact, unspent, and unrecognized, waiting in jars and rolls and inherited collections for the moment when the right pair of eyes would find them and the right knowledge would transform that finding into one of the most extraordinary discoveries a person can make. That moment could come for anyone. It could come for you. Check your quarters. Learn the dates, learn the mint marks, learn what double die lettering looks like under magnification, learn what an off-center strike or a broad strike or a rotated die error looks like when you encounter it. Carry that knowledge with you every single day, because the coin that could rewrite your life might be closer than you ever imagined. It might be sitting right now in a jar on your kitchen counter, in a roll in your sock drawer, in the change you received this morning at the coffee shop and dropped into your coat pocket without looking twice. Look twice. Look carefully. And never underestimate what an ordinary coin might be hiding, because today, of all days, you know better than anyone that the most extraordinary things in this world sometimes come disguised as 25 cents.